There it is. We're going to send out a timeline later this week. I don't have an exact day. Link to Eric's website and all this stuff. So the pressure is not to memorize it tonight. I will tell you right now, Flight Circle is loading your information into the system. You won't have access to it yet. We've instructed them not to send you out invites to use the system, because what we don't want is people in there adding a bunch of stuff when we know we're not technically live yet. We're not using it. So I don't want people scheduling stuff, checking in flights and checking out flights and messing with our tack times and our hub times. So they're working on that, putting in your basic information, street addresses, emails, phone numbers. There's some additional information that we've never captured before that we will prompt you guys once we're live that you need to go in and add, and it driver's license numbers, stuff like that. And then the other thing is then we have to go in and key in or enter in all your pilot information, all your checkouts and stuff like that. So that's why we're having them add you now, not give you access, so that we have time to get you guys up and running, because all that pilot information drives whether or not you can reserve a plane. This system will auto disable you if you aren't up to date. If it deems you not legal to fly, you can't reserve a plane unless you put an instructor on it. If your instructor is not legal, you got to find a different instructor, because then it's not going to let you do the plane. So that's kind of where we're at with that. We need to pick some times to probably do some just additional Zoom training where, since you guys can't get in there and look at what's happening in Flight Circle right now and really play with it, we thought we might have an opportunity where we could just pull up the screen, walk through the process, and let people ping us with questions as we did it. But we need to come up with some dates, and we'll communicate those out when we think those would be available. At some point, but probably right at the end of the month, you'll get a email from them basically welcoming you to use the product. And that's when you can go in and you're live and you can do everything you need to do. You guys have any questions about timeline and where we're going? Feel good?
Hurt.
Exactly.
Okay, so I've kind of just broken this up into like the big sections of stuff that Flight Circle does. So I'm just going to walk through them. Raise your hand if you have a question. You can put it in the chat, or you can save it to the end, just kind of whatever. So like I said, the thing you're mostly going to see on the front end is the schedule, and schedule book will go away. One of the cool new things about Jim Seisel, yes, we will transition the schedule existing in schedule book on the night we go live, actually the morning of when we go live. They will enter in all of the reservations. And part of what everyone's going to have to do after we go live is verify that your reservations got over correctly. Shouldn't be any reason that they won't, but we probably just need to double check all that stuff. Okay, so one thing that this is going to do that schedule book didn't do is now you're going to get reservations. So if I go out and I reserve the plane, it's going to send a confirmation to my email. And I think one day before your flight, it prompts you with a reminder email. If you have an instructor on the reservation, they get a reminder email. So all that's pretty cool. I'm also going to get pinged. We have some settings behind the scenes. So if I see you changing stuff or other various things, my email is going to get blown up. So I have a strange feeling we're going to scale back all those notifications at some point. One of the cool things that this is going to do that schedule book didn't is it applies individual aircraft checkout rules. So if you don't have a checkout date in the Archer, but you do in the 172, you can check out the 172. But if you try and reserve the Archer, you have to have an instructor on that unless you've been checked out. Once you add the instructor to it, it will let you check the flight. It will let you reserve the plane to go do your lesson, to do your checkout. Schedule book had that ability, but it didn't. We had to manually do it by person. I'd have to go in and click each plane. This is based off the data of your checkouts. That's something also I can't override. So if you're not checked out, you're not checked out. And just like if you're not legal to fly, you're not legal to fly. I can't go in and override it. And I'm not going to keep a separate document tracking fake checkout dates so that people could do things, like, if that makes sense. Two of the things that will not change are our rules about reservations, in that you have a max of 3, and anything greater than 5 days, you have to have approved by the board. What's going to look different is that in schedule book, if Isabel wanted 4 reservations, I went into her profile and added a 4th. I can't do that in Flight Circle. It applies the 3 reservation rule across the board to everyone equally. And so when your guys are scheduling check rides, I'm going to have to go in and block that with a maintenance reservation and just put in there, Isabel check ride. And then whenever we get to that day, swap it out for a reservation that you can put the time in and be billed for it. So that's a little bit different. And we're going to have to work through the kinks of how that works in the real world while it's happening. We've submitted or are going to submit as that is a development idea to the people who run this site, to kind of have one-off situations for those types of rules. And I'm going to go straight on to instructors because I see a lot of questions about that, and then I'll pause for just a second. So instructors, we didn't have in the system before, and now they're going to show up because you need to be able to add them to certain flights. It's up to the instructors if they want to manage their availability in the system, block off times when they're not available to fly, etc., or leave it wide open. So one thing, you need to be on the same page with your instructors and knowing where should I look to know if you're available and where should I schedule. They're going to get notifications when you do schedule them, when you add them, when you change the plane, when you cancel the flight. You will not pay instructors through this website. You still will pay each other separately, just the way you always have.
Let me jump in there, Rodney, and make sure that people get this. We didn't use the program and schedule book. Other organizations do, where CFIs are listed as a resource, just like an airplane. We chose not to do it because none of our instructors work 8 to 5 sort of jobs and have regular periods of time when they're available. So you're not going to see any of the instructors probably put out specific times when they're available or not available. You still need to call the CFI you wanted. I know I will be very upset if I get an email from somebody, particularly someone I don't know, who just happened to schedule me for a checkout flight sometime. So before you put a CFI on your flight, make sure that that person really does agree to fly with you. Thanks.
No, that's a good call. And I've got my dream team monitoring the chat. I can't do the chat and read my notes and speak at the same time. So I might have to circle back to some things if you guys will allow me. So the next thing, so now that you've put a reservation on the schedule, you show up to the airport that day. The first step you're going to do is what they call dispatching a plane, which is essentially you're checking the plane out. The way to think about this is used by FBOs, where if you think about Air Associates, you went to the front desk and grabbed a binder and they dispatched the plane. They told you went and got it and were available to fly it. We're self-dispatching planes. We're self-checking out. What's basically happening here is you're verifying the beginning times. The Hobbs and tack time are going to show up. They're ruled forward from the previous pilot, which we'll get to why that's important. You're going to make sure those match. It's also going to show you the open squawks for the plane right there, and you're going to review it then. So no more excuses about not knowing where the squawks are at or not reviewing them. They're going to be annotated right there, 3 open squawks, and then you can click and see what they are. Checking in is another absolutely critical step because it is no one else they can't use the plane after you if you haven't put in the time that you used when you're done, because then they can't verify their beginning times. So you need to check in your flight while you're standing at the plane after each flight. And by flight, so if it's local, that's intuitive, right? You're going an hour and a half, you come back, you do your time. If you're going on an extended trip, sometimes what we see is someone will record their time outbound on the flight log, and then 3 days later, they record their time inbound on the flight log. You don't have to do that. You can just do one whenever you get back to the hangar when the flight's complete. Because it's not going to let you check it in, I don't think, multiple times. It's going to throw fits about that. Do you guys have any questions about that? The other cool thing that's going to do, so in schedule book, it tracked that you had 3 reservations. It did not recognize that your flight was complete until the calendar rolled over at midnight. In Flight Circle, as soon as you check in your flight and it's deemed complete, you're available to schedule your next one at that time, which I think people will really enjoy. You all good with that? Still with me? Okay. So one of the things, this is actually going to be a pretty big change for all of us, will be fuel reimbursements and how we submit receipts, because now we don't have someone going to the plane every month, me, picking up the timesheets. We also don't want to have to, now I don't want to have to drive there and just pick up receipts. And so what you'll do whenever you check in a flight, you're going to record how many gallons of fuel the plane used, just like we have before. This would be fuel charged to the club and oil you put in it. And then there's a step to enter what is called an adjustment. And one of those adjustments is going to be your fuel reimbursements if you've purchased fuel out of pocket. The point you want to capture here is the gallons. We have it set up, and the planes are set up this way too. They bill out of this system at a $0 rate, and the fuel reimbursement is at $0 as well, because we're not generating invoices out of this. We're just capturing the time. Tim's still going to send invoices out of QuickBooks for the time being. So what we want captured is that you did 25 gallons of out-of-pocket fuel reimbursement with that adjustment. And so as long as you do that during check-in, it captures it and will be in the Excel file that we will send to Tim every month to do billing. What you still need to do, but it will be different, is now you need to take a picture of that receipt and either convert it to a PDF or send it as a JPEG, and you need to send it to Tim at the treasurer's email account. And we're going to reiterate that and tell you the format of the subject line of this email so that he can match them all up. But we want those sent directly to him so he has them and we're not dealing with paper copies. And that includes your out-of-pocket reimbursements and if you use the self-serve pump at LXT. Does that all make sense? Is anyone freaking out about having to
I wanted to clarify, so if a pilot flies one of the trainers and does not put any fuel in the plane at all, there is no requirement for him to record any fuel used.
Correct.
Time you're going to record something is when you put fuel in the gas tanks of whatever plane you're flying.
Makes sense.
And also, if you come out of your own pocket to pay for fuel, you also want to record that as well. So one of the things that I don't know that everybody is aware of, but you're not required to top off the tanks after every single flight when you fly virtually any of our planes. What we want to avoid, especially with the trainers, is for somebody to come out and do a couple of runs in the pattern and then put the plane away after 45 minutes and order 6 gallons of gas or 8 gallons of gas to top off the tanks. It's not necessary, and it's extra work for Air Associates because they bring out their trucks. It's not a self-serve deal, and it's a lot less bookkeeping. If you cannot put 20 gallons of gas in any of these planes, then just leave it for the next guy. because I've seen fuel receipts 3 times in one day for one plane for less than 10 gallons, and it's just not necessary. So just to give me a break, to give Air Associates a break, if you can't get 20 gallons of gas in the plane, then don't worry about it. And if you get in a plane and it's down, 10 or 15 gallons, then you're just trying to be understanding, because the guy before you is not doing anything wrong. It's just that we're trying to avoid having the fuel truck come out 3 times in a day to put 6 gallons of fuel in plane. That's what I'm
And on that, if you do find the gas down, and this is for any airplane, and you think you need more because of what you're going to do, sure, put it in. Don't feel that you have to take it with the fuel down. This is why we leave on the 2 pipers, we leave the fuel down so that you can get extra people in. But if you want to use that extra weight for gas, certainly go buy the gas.
Yeah, and so everything Tim just said, there's a sheet in the front of the binders that basically lays out what Tim just said. It tells you where they're expected to be refueled and kind of lays all that out. And I don't want to skip this part. I don't have it in my notes. The binders will still exist in the planes because we still need the fuel cards. You still need a fuel procedure. We're going to add some different procedure documents in there. Some of them have the weight and balance in them. So the binders will still be there. There's going to be a big page though that tells you you have to use Flight Circle. Everything else you're looking for isn't in here anymore. So you can't screw this up. I promise. Okay, are we good on, are we good on, someone will challenge me on it, I'm sure. Are we good on fuel? Okay, so what the really, I think one of the really coolest things, and this is going to make Steve and Josh's life easier as well as everyone else, will be the way we deal with squawks. So the QR codes and the Excel spreadsheet will go away, because now as a pilot, if you fly the plane and there's something you need to squawk, you have the functionality in this system to squawk it. And when you do that, it's going to send an email to the people we have attributed to that plane. It's going to be the plane captain and whatever maintenance officer is in charge of it. They're going to get an email saying, hey, someone's squawked the plane. And then that's immediately available to everyone in real time. It will also show the resolution and the status of the squawks. So you may have one that's been entered and not verified. I don't remember what all the statuses are. They're even color coded, green, red, and orange, I think. The one thing you've got to think about, and this doesn't change at all, you're going to have more up-to-date information, but as individual pilots, you can't pick an option in this system to ground the plane. And we didn't want that happening because we don't want to prematurely do things. But at the end of the day, if you guys don't feel safe because of something, then don't fly. At the end of the day, you're the pilot in command. It is your responsibility. Even if someone else hasn't grounded it, don't fly if you don't feel safe. Do you have any questions about squawks? Nope. Okay, we're cruising right along. We're getting ready for our descent checklist. Here we go. Basic information. So now you guys have access to this and you can update it. So if you move, it's now your responsibility to update your address. You don't have to send an email to me to do it. You guys own that data. On the pilot profile side, we're going to start out where you will still submit checkouts and new certificates and stuff like that. You're still going to send that documentation to me. I'm going to review it and I'll update your profile. There's an option that if we get to a point where we think it's all working well, that we can turn everyone loose and update their own pilot information. But I'm pretty type A and kind of a control freak, and I don't know that I'm there yet emotionally to just turn 100 people loose. So we're going to retain that power, is what I'm going to call it. So no real change there in terms of pilot accreditation. This has a messaging function built into it, just like Schedule Book. It does not have a pop-up function, which some people will cheer and some people will not like. But what I believe what happens when you send a message in there, you have like a personal inbox that you see the messages in, and you're also going to get an email that says a message has been sent, and I believe it shows the text of the message, just like Schedulebook does now. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to set up user groups. So if you wanted to email all the CFIs through the schedule, you can just click group CFIs or group plane captains and just email them directly through that. Any questions about that? Pretty straightforward. So one of the big changes I think is going to be, or I know is going to be, is how do you access this? Well, you're going to have a smartphone or a tablet with a cell or Wi-Fi connection to do it. And right now, you can do it. It's web browser based. It has an app as well, and we'll send out instructions on how to add that. It's really simple. All the app does at this point is launch. It's like a bookmark. It launches you directly to the website, and the website is designed for browsing on different sizes devices. So you can, it's mobile enabled. It's going to look good on your phone, intuitive, and you can use it. It shrinks and adjusts for what you're viewing. So it's not like if you look at Schedulebook on an iPhone right now, you got to try driving and clicking the notes section on that, and you got to zoom in real big, and it's dangerous. I don't recommend it. Billing and payments. So we're not billing through the system. All this is doing is capturing your time. You're still going to get an invoice from Tim every month, and you're going to pay him the same way that you've been paying him, PayPal or sending in a check. Do not enter your credit card information in Flight Circle. I think it's a field that you guys have access to. We're not using it. I wouldn't put it in there in case you don't want it exposed, in case something happened. Reduce your data footprint. We've discussed if in the future we could do ACH payments at the end of every month based on what we have. We're going to have to work through integrating it into QuickBooks, because what Flight Circle doesn't do is take care of invoices, our AP side and our expenses and stuff like that. So phase one, no real change in terms of how you get an invoice, how you pay it. The last thing I have, we're on final approach here. We have a couple rules that are going to change in how we monitor them, or how we're going to have to figure out how to do it. As you're all aware, if you're a 100-hour pilot, you're supposed to fly with 100-hour or less. You're supposed to fly with an instructor every 90 days. If you are a Deb pilot or a Saratoga pilot, you're supposed to fly every 90 days. If you don't, you have to fly with an instructor. Previously, I had a report. Chris built me a report previously at another time that would tell me who was out of currency on this. This doesn't have that report, and if we apply any sort of currency requirement based on days, it applies it to all the airplanes and all the pilots. So you're going to have to be very diligent about knowing those rules exist, holding yourself accountable, and giving us time to figure out how we're going to track it on the back end, or can get them to develop that feature in Flight Circle, this is the first thing we ask them to already work on. Keep in mind, if you break these rules, you technically are risking your membership. Fly at your own risk, I guess. One of the things I've done is when you dispatch a flight to yourself, there's a checkbox, and I've put the wording in there that basically says, as a member, I'm aware of these rules. I've listed them out, and by clicking this box, I attest that I'm in compliance. You have to check that box before you can take the plane, before it will let you dispatch it. So that's our fail-safe reminder. I'll throw a plug for ForeFlight while I'm at it. I've set up currency reminders in ForeFlight for the Saratoga and the Deb. They're based on doing 3 landings every 90 days, but realistically, if I go out just for a currency flight in one of those planes, I should do 3 landings anyway. So I've set those up, and that's how I hold myself accountable, and it's been pretty helpful. That's what I have in terms of how things are going to be and change. What questions do you have for me that I haven't seen in the chat that have been addressed or haven't been asked?
Buddy, let me add a couple. Number one, as far as the insurance goes, the insurance asks us what the protocol is for each pilot to qualify to fly each plane. If there is some type of an accident or there's something that happens tragically in one of our planes, the first thing the insurance company wants to go is this guy legal to fly these planes according to the rules of the club and the policy that we wrote? So if you're not legal to fly and something happens,
You're on the hook.
you might be on the hook. And so it was really important that you stay current and that we've got the information on who's current and who's not, because if we're not tracking it, then the club could also be on the hook. The claim could be denied. The second thing is, as far as payments go, right now, we're going to keep it as it is, but we've already engaged a ACH processing company that is promising that they can, given your bank information and your routing information, they can just hit your checking account once a month with the information from QuickBooks that I would supply them as to whatever your balance is. So just as a heads up, going down the road, we might be asking for your checking account and routing information that we're going to try to integrate with the QuickBooks. The reason we're not doing credit cards, in case anybody isn't aware of it or not aware of it, I know everybody would love to use credit cards. Our total budget, the revenue that we take in every year is almost $300,000. The credit cards charge 3%.
Yeah.
If you do the math on $300,000 and 3%, you're almost up to an engine overhaul. So it's just not an expense that we really want to absorb at this time, and we don't feel like it's too big of an inconvenience for people to just use their checking account. So I know that's always been a question of why don't we take credit cards? That's the reason. So that being said, that's all I've got.
Hey,
But here, let me
go for it,
Let me
Bob.
add in real quick about this, the ACH. Basically, what will happen is you'll get your statement first of the month, and then you'll already know that on the 14th or whatever day is designated, that it'll hit your bank account, that ACH automatic payment. That'll just keep us from running any negative balances from anyone. It'll be definitely a benefit to all of us, because if somebody's running a negative balance, it's costing each and every one of us.
Yeah.
Well, from a paperwork standpoint, it's a lot easier for me, and it should be a lot easier for everybody else not to have to physically go through the process of making a PayPal payment or sending a check in. It just will happen automatically. So hopefully it'll simplify everybody's life.
Hey, Rodney.
Yeah.
First, I want to applaud you and the team. I mean, this is, as you know, it'll be rough, but then in 6 months, everybody, it will be the normal. So I had one question, just watching you go through that process. Well, because I think it's really important, and hopefully, can you still do reservations where somebody's already got the plane? I didn't hear you say
Standby?
Standby reservation.
Yep, I'm glad you brought it up, because I know I blew by that, and I'm gonna
You know, you
address
did
one
not
of-
use your checklist. You did not use your checklist, buddy.
whoever put this checklist together didn't put everything on it. It's not complete. That's the problem. So yes, so there's still a standby functionality within this, and we want people to use it. And you can stack more than one standby in the schedule. So if you got multiple people, it tracks who added them first, and it will email based on if plane came out of maintenance, it's now available or whatever. So that will work the same. Steve's question was, if we cancel a flight, do you still email the club to let them know? I don't have an exact idea of all the alerts you can send on or put in behind the scenes, but I don't know if you can get an alert for every single cancellation that happens, which you're not going to want to have in the first place. So yes, you should, if no one else had it on standby and you had it for a trip, you should still email the whole club to let them know that the plane's now open. One of the things we're going to have to figure out that I haven't quite gone through yet, or we haven't got on the same page, and Tim can chime in, is what happens when we have time discrepancies between the person who checked it in and when you check it out. In the time being, take pictures of the tack in the hobs, and I would say just send them to Tim and I. We can do adjustments behind the scenes to fix the times in the planes and get the billing right. The other thing, after you check in a flight, you're going to get an email that has your flight time in it. And so now you can use that to validate that Tim billed you right out of QuickBooks at the end of the month. Just save those receipts. You can also go back and review all your flight times over the course of the existence of the program. Whereas before, we took the timesheets and they're in my basement in an old file cabinet, and you guys don't ever see them again.
And FYI, I know on the Hobbs meter, sometimes when it's right in between digits, I got it, so my books will balance. I have rounded up. So whatever the guy who's flying next, whatever he wrote in as his beginning Hobbs time, now becomes the ending Hobbs time from the guy before. So if there's a 1/10 difference there, I've added that 1/10, and I've done that consistently for everybody. So just as an FYI, if your if your logbooks don't match your bill by a 10th, sometimes that's the reason. But otherwise, my times don't balance at the end of the month because I'm missing a 1 or 2 tenths of an hour. So just want to give you a heads up on that's the way I have consistently been applying the difference.
Hey, Rodney, as far as checkouts go, does the echelon still apply? In other words, will the system capture that if you're checked out to Saratoga, that you're then checked out in the planes below it?
It's going to track you on an individual basis, and then it's going to read the date of when your last checkout was. And so I'm going to have to figure, so whenever you do your flight and you send it in, I'm going to have to update the dates in there. And if you don't, let's say you're checked out in everything in year one, and I put in the dates and they reflect today's date. And then next year you check out in the Saratoga, but you don't check out at anything else. What I'm going to have to do is delete the dates out of your profile for the other planes because if I just update it with a new date, it would still recognize you as checked out. So I'll have to clear the field out and do it that way. And that's how it will know to prevent you from letting you schedule the other ones without prompting you to do something with an instructor. And I'll just have to know or figure out how to track that what you really needed to do was just do the written exam and have it approved by instructor and send it back in. That's a good question, because now the wheels are turning. I'm like, God, where am I going to track that?
Rodney, I have a question for you. And that is, yeah, if you're the instructor on a flight, can you get a report of that time if you're the instructor?
I don't know if when they check in the flight, if you're listed on it, if you get the summary when it's checked in or not. We haven't run that scenario whenever we've been kind of messing with stuff, to be honest. If nothing else, hopefully your very polite and accommodating student would just forward you the email if you weren't copied on it.
Frank just said, yes, you will.
There you go.
Hey, Doug, you've been politely raising your hand for a while now. Go ahead with your question.
Hey, thanks. Doug Flynn here. I know, back to the billing question, I can't remember where I read it, or if it's a bylaw or just a policy on the, if you're not within 60 days, you can not reserve a plane. Will that be changed, or does it have to be addressed if we change it to just like the ACH draft? Will that have to be addressed, or will that just go away?
So I think that, so someone clean me up here, that rule exists, but it would be something that Tim is enforcing on a case-by-case basis. That's not built into anything. It's judgment based right now. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. And this,
I've never seen any restriction on how far in advance you can reserve an airplane. It's not written down anywhere.
No, I'm talking more specifically, Chris, about the billing. Like, I know, again, I can't remember where I've written, but if you're delinquent for more than 60 days, you cannot reserve a plane. And I know just in my personal case, sometimes I'm out of town or, you know, things get crazy and I just don't pay attention and I'm like, oh crap, I need to pay Tim. And so I just, with the new system that we're talking about, if that will be, I feel like it just needs to be at least addressed, taken out, or cleaned up in some form.
Well,
it's
easy way to get around
likely,
that is just to make sure that you always have a couple $100 extra in your account. Right?
just prepay for the year because we have an insurance bill coming due.
There you go.
Just to address that question, I will tell you this, I don't generally worry about anybody who is 30 or 60 days late, because it's generally not a big sum, and I often follow what their payment pattern has been. What usually gets my attention when somebody's tab gets over $500, and part of that tab is 60 days late, that's generally when I get a hold of Rodney and tell him that we need to get collected. And generally before you get pulled off of schedule book or flight circle, whatever it's going to be, you'll get an email saying that if you don't get your account paid, we're going to be cutting you off. So,
All right,
it's not going to be anything that's going to be, it won't be anything sudden. And with the new payment, the new ACH payment that hits your checking account every month, it should eliminate all of that because everybody's going to be.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Well, fantastic. I felt like I've been behind, so maybe because I haven't received that email or a call from Rodney, I'm in the clear.
Now you're not, because you admitted it.
I let Tim chase people for money. I just cut your access. He busts the kneecaps.
This is, I'm not current members right now, so we're in good shape.
So
I think Kevin can attest that I'm the first to admit to any mistakes I make. So he's tired of hearing me say, "Oh, I screwed that up."
Yeah, Frank has pointed out in the chat, it does have a limit. We could set a dollar limit and it would see if you accumulated during the month. If you, well, let's say $3,000, which is a lot of flying, it'll cut you off. So we could do that if we wanted to, but that would be if it was accumulating AR and billing balances in Flight Circle. It's not going to read it from QuickBooks now. Cool. Anything else for me before I let Eric show you guys some documents that he's put together? Okay, thank you guys for your patience. Thank you for your patience going forward, specifically at the end of this month. Really be patient. We'll get it done and we'll get it there. So Eric, it's your show.
Thanks, Rodney. You've
Well
done a
done.
good job.
Hey,
All right, can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
My camera is not working. I'm gonna try to share screen here and we'll see if that works. Hang on a second. Can you see it?
Very nice.
Yeah.
All right. So this is what the Flight Circle site looks like. It's flightcircle.com/v1. It's the same place you go. You can go there today and add this to your phone. There's a kind of a, it's only on mobile, but up here in the top right, there'll be 3 little dots and you can say add to homepage and it will just land there and it looks like an app. Basically, like Rodney was saying, it's just a shortcut to this site. It's very mobile friendly. So you can go ahead and get that pre-installed, ready to go. And Rodney, do we want to log in here or just show them documents or?
I guess it depends on what people's appetite for time is. I would definitely do the documents and then we can just go
So-
from there and kind of get a feel for what people want.
So this is like a very rough draft of some of the documentation. We're going to have this available for everyone. It's really more of a quick reference guide. The first thing you see after you log in will be the schedule. This is what the schedule looks like. You'll see all the planes over here, and then you can see the instructors listed below. First thing you're going to want to do is fill out your personal information. This is the stuff it collects on you. Most of this should be filled out by the time you get there. If not, if it's incorrect or incomplete, just fill it in and click save. When you go to make a reservation, you just go to schedule, click on a time. You can see that these big red bars on 92 Quebec and 673, they've been put into maintenance. This is what a maintenance reservation will look like. This plane is offline, not available. So we're going to reserve 843, the new 182. You just click on 3 o'clock there. Then it will ask you, and there was a lot of questions earlier about how you, well, not a lot, about the instructors. What type of reservation? I believe primary is the only thing that will be available to, oh no, standby will also be there. You will choose your name. This is my fake account just for this documentation. Departure, return, which plane. If there's an instructor, you can hit this drop down here and you'll see a list of all the instructors. You can type in your route. This is optional. The rules are optional. The notes are optional. As soon as you're done, click save. Oh, yeah, it'll give you an option to put any squawks in. Once you're done, it'll show up on the schedule like this. If you've chosen an instructor, you'll notice it ends up, because we chose Chris Hope, it ends up on his schedule as well. So this is another way that you guys will be able to see who's available. You know, is Chris already booked during the time that you want her to go, even if it's not for the plane you were looking at. So I mean, that's all it takes to make a reservation. If you want to edit or cancel one, you just find it, hit edit. You can change anything here, cancel or save, and you're done. To dispatch, this is basically when you show up at the aircraft and you want to fly. This is dispatch is the term they use. It's more of an FBO term, like Rodney was explaining, but you click dispatch. This is the most important deal right here. This is where you check your hobs out, tack out. This maintenance, this does an automatic maintenance check to make sure that you're not too close to the 100-hour. You're not too close to a seat rail inspection. You're not too close to an oil change. You're not too close to anything. If it's yellow, that means there's a warning you need to look into. Hey, you're only 6 hours from the 100-hour. Be careful. If it's red, it means it failed some sort of maintenance. Honestly, it should be offline at that point. The balance, we just got to learn to ignore this, really. And it's something that Flight Circle demands appears, but since we're not doing any billing through the system, it's always going to be 0. Your aircraft checkout, this means you're qualified. You have a medical, you are checked out in this plane, you're current, all that good stuff. And here's the box that Rodney was talking about. Read this, check it. The dispatch button will not be clickable until you check this box. And that's it. Now you've got the plane, you can go fly. Once you get back, you check it in. You find the thing that you've already checked out. You enter your hobs, you enter your tack. Always choose standard rate, which will be 0. If there are any notes, enter them. If there are any squawks, you can enter them here, and those will appear for the next person who comes in. The very next guy who checks out the same plane, you'll see those squawks. Also, plane captain and maintenance crew will get notified. If you have a fuel reimbursement, that will be on the next, after you click next up here. There's a fuel reimbursement option where you enter your location, gallons, dollars. You will still need to take a photo of that receipt and send it over to Tim. You add the fuel reimbursement, any fuel and oil you added. This is sort of a review. Then you're done. Again, this will always total 0. And when you get to finish here, there's actually this little arrow. You can click finish and go to schedule, or finish and go to receipt. And your receipt will look like this, always 0.
Love 0.
And then fuel reimbursements is the next part I got to. That's the same part of check-in. Have not gotten to preferences or messaging yet. That will be part of the training that we provide. That we're going to do we'll send out a notification this week about training dates that everyone can log on to. Frank and Rodney and I will be available to walk everybody through everything, the actual process. You can see it in motion, do a Q&A, and get everybody ready to go. So I know that was kind of a very quick step through. I'm sure there are probably some questions, but what do you guys think?
You did a great job. I know that.
Eric, I've got some questions.
Okay.
Relating to the fuel and the accounting for the fuel, we are going to have the members, let's just start with, if they pay out of their pocket, the only way they get reimbursed is if they take a picture of that receipt and then they send it to my treasurer email address. Is that correct?
I believe that is correct. This is removing the burden of writing down all the stuff on the receipt, sticking it in the binder, and then someone collecting it from the binder at the end of the month.
I mean, theoretically, if someone wanted to put it in an envelope and mail it to the PO box, they could. If they're
Well, my
averse
question
to.
might be, could we just keep the envelope in the plane and then keep the receipt in that deal? It doesn't need to be polled, but I mean, I'll go out and poll them once a month, but as my thing is a backup, have some kind of a backup. The second thing I was going to ask is that the receipts, we don't get receipts from Executive Airport. Does anybody ever get a receipt from the fuel truck? So we don't get a receipt for that. So that's not an issue, but at least Summit, there is a receipt. And I do use those receipts. The difference between Lee Summit and Executive is they send me an invoice after every fuel charge. Lee Summit sends me one invoice at the end of the month, and I compare those against the hard copies that you guys put into that pocket. I wouldn't mind staying with that system because I don't need your hard copy to reimburse anybody. It's just as a check for me. I think I would prefer it is the fuel receipts that need to be reimbursed get photographed and sent to my email address. The rest of them just go into that vinyl pocket, at least at the beginning, so I can kind of get my arms wrapped around all the new procedures. Would that be a problem, you think?
I think that would be an easy thing, Rodney, as we rewrite the fielding procedures for the airplanes that we're talking about doing, we add that to that. If you want to get reimbursed, better take a picture. Otherwise, just put the receipt in the back in the book like we've always done.
Well, and the other thing I want to confirm with Rodney is that I will not need you to go pull those receipts. You can just leave them in there, and I can go out there.
Rodney's like,
I can get those. I can get them as needed. So if I need to confirm, some fuel invoices, because right now I do it off of the flight log. If the flight log isn't filled out properly, then I get the receipts and stuff. So if I need to get those hard copies, they're there. But it's not going to be anything that I'm going to need to have pulled on a timely basis. I can just grab them whenever I'm out at the airport. But I think the only ones I want sent to my email address would be the ones that need to be reimbursed. I think that might help that might help me from being overwhelmed, because we do a lot of fueling on a daily basis, and getting all those receipts every day is not gonna be a fun job, so.
So you want the paper receipts for fuel charged to the club account left in the binders,
Yes, that
You
would be
want-
best.
and you want fuel reimbursements sent to you via email.
Yeah, if you want to be reimbursed, send that to my email, and then that will, for me, that'll make my life a lot easier. At least at the beginning, let's see how this works. And then if we need to tweak it after that, then we can do that. Right now, I think I just want the receipts that I need to make a accounting entry under somebody's statement, then I'd rather just get those in the email.
Okay.
I've got a question. If you're making a long cross country, you have multiple receipts. Does Flight Circle handle that situation?
Good question. I mean, worst case scenario, you're gonna have to add up all your gallons and just submit the sum of the 3 or however far you flew. I don't know, have we tested doing multiple fuel reimbursements on a single flight, Frank or Eric?
We have not. The only thing that I can see that maybe you brought that question is there's a location field in there. I think if you just picked any one of the places you bought fuel, because you're going to be reimbursed at the home field rate regardless. So it doesn't really matter where you bought it. It just matters how many gallons and what your total cost was. And as long as the receipts back that up, it seems like it should work. Tim, am I correct there?
I'm sorry, I was distracted.
Just gallons that matter.
What was the question?
Yeah, it's just gallons and amount, right?
Gallons is what you get reimbursed. You're reimbursed based upon the amount per gallon you're charged on your wet rate. You get reimbursed for whatever gallons that you put back into the tank. So
Okay.
I don't care how much, I don't even look at what you guys paid for the gas.
Or where they bought it, that doesn't matter.
To me, it doesn't matter at all.
Okay, so you can just make those things up, and as long as you get the gallons correct, Kevin, it sounds like multiple fueling reimbursements can happen.
Thank you.
Right.
Hey, Don,
Yeah, go ahead.
can you maybe explain your question a little bit more to me? So we're not changing, nothing about what you're being billed hourly in terms of rates has changed. What you're seeing in Flight Circle is 0 because we don't want it thinks that we're billing out of it. And so we don't want it accumulating in a balance on your account. And then we would have to clear that balance out every month, or it would just increase in perpetuity while Tim's collecting, and we don't want to have to do that dual. So that's why everything's put at 0. Does that answer your question?
Who are we talking to, Ron?
So who's asking?
Don Ernst.
Oh.
Okay, the question, I guess, is if I fly 3 hours out of Lee Summit, at what rate am I charged for those 3 hours?
You're
Okay.
charged the same you were today. So if it's the Archer, it's, what is it? 12 gallons per hour plus $59 at the local fuel rate. So that none of that has changed. The fuel rates that were shown on the website before, or the rental rates, I should say, are the same. They just don't, we haven't put those into Flight Circle because it will try and charge you that out of Flight Circle.
And just as a reminder to everybody, because we're just doing a one wet rate now, the amount you're paying is the price of gas. Let's say you're flying out of Lee Summit in the Archer. The Archer burns 8.5 gallons per hour. The price of MoGas out of Lee Summit last month was $2.76. So, and then that plane rents at $59 an hour. So we multiply $2.76 times 8.5 gallons an hour plus $59 for the plane. That ends up with one wet rate, and that's what you're charged. And if you go buy gas in Richmond, Missouri or Hannibal or wherever, I don't even look at how much you paid for the gas. You might pay $8 a gallon. You're only getting reimbursed for $2.76 per gallon because that's what you were charged. And that's how those
Okay.
wet rates.
Well,
The
how,
same thing
how,
works out of
how often does
Go
the
ahead.
wet rate, or how often does that 276 change? Is that,
once a month, and one of the things that I do is I look at all the receipts that everybody turns in, the hard copies from Lee Summit, because they give you a printout, and just verify that the price that they are charging at that time is what I'm charging on your bill. Now, sometimes they'll have a rate change in the middle of the month, and so I may fudge it a little bit to kind of get a middle number for everybody, but by and large, that doesn't happen very often. Now, sometimes you might see, we have some pilots that like to call the fuel truck out and put 100 low lead fuel into a MOGAS plane, like the Archer. And now that is a significant difference. That's, instead of paying $2.76 a gallon, they're gonna put 20 gallons of fuel that costs $4.11, or it varies, but sometimes it's $3.85. When that happens, I get the bill from Lee Summit, and it has each individual charge for 100 low lead gas and a separate section for MOGAS. They just have a different charge for each pump. So pump number, if I got a bunch of pump number 1 charges, I go back and look to see who purchased the fuel, and then I may adjust your statement to reflect the fact that you're putting 100 low lead fuel into that tank instead of MOGAS. And so sometimes you may get an invoice that reflects a higher rate, hourly rate, because of that difference in the cost of the fuel that you put in the plane. But, that's pretty rare. It doesn't happen real often, but occasionally that does happen.
okay, so the gallons per hour is fixed, but the dollar per gallon could change.
The dollar, yes, the price to rent the plane doesn't change. The amount of fuel that the plane burns doesn't change, but the cost of fuel per gallon does change. Now, it hasn't changed at executive for about 2 years, but it does change much more frequently. And before I start billing each month, I go and look and see what they predominantly have charged for that entire month. Most of the time, it's the same for the entire month.
And for you, Don, and for everybody else who asked, occasionally I get a question when somebody's filled out their annual flight review. They'll say, hey, when I looked at the cruise checklist and I did that gallons per hour in the cruise checklist, it doesn't match what I'm being billed at. So let me tell you how that fuel flow for billing came about. We track every purchase of fuel. Obviously, we track how many hours the airplane flies. Over a number of years, we just looked at how many gallons, how many hours, divided it out, and that's the average. Particularly on our training airplanes, that number is a little higher because usually people do not lean the airplane out because you're flying low level. Lots of full power time because you're flying touch and goes and whatnot. So we pretty much know how many hours on the average each airplane burns, and that's where those numbers came from.
It's surprisingly consistent. I will say that. It's almost on a monthly basis, it's within a quarter of a gallon, high or low, of 8.5, for instance, with the Archer. Each month it burns right in that. And that's one of the ways that I figure out when somebody's turning a receipt, or if there's a charge from Lee Summit that I don't have a receipt for. I can figure it out.
I noticed on Flight Circle, if you click on the airplane, there in the left column, it pops up, it shows what the rate is.
Yeah, I translated, I took that from our website, which has been out there. I mean, this has been knowledge, this public knowledge dating back. I put that in there in the notes section. So just like in schedule book where it had notes for plane captain and how to contact them, that's in there. And I put the billing rate in there so that people would have an idea.
Yeah, very good.
Thank you.
Is what?
What rate, is it in there now?
In Flight Circle?
No,
It,
it's scheduled.
so it doesn't have the
Oh, it's-
exact dollar rate blended. What it has is the equation that Tim uses to derive it. It tells you the rental rate of 59 for the Archer plus 8.5 gallons of fuel at the LXT fuel price. The price isn't filled in. It's just telling you, here's the theory behind what you're being billed every month.
And going back to Tim's comment about using fuel off the truck at Lee Summit instead of self-service, there's times when that is a better option. For example, pump's broken. You come back and the pump is being tied up and will obviously be tied up for a while because you're refilling it. Occasionally I've had some people with weaker arms, shall we say, than others, particularly if it's icy out. And if you have the truck come out to the hangar at Lee Summit, this isn't true at Executive, but at Lee Summit, if you need help pushing an airplane back in the hangar, they're happy to do it. And I would rather see the club pay a little extra for the gas and have somebody help, rather than somebody, particularly in the wintertime, try to push an airplane back in when you can't do it, slip on the ice and get hurt. So do it if you need to, but don't do it if you don't need to.
Cool. Anything else about Flight Circle? Yeah, I would say Eric just put this in the chat, but do you think, would anyone on this be interested in, us doing a live demo, like actually clicking through the screens? Do you think you've got a good enough grasp? Do we push the people who weren't here tonight, kind of get the same exposure? What do you guys, what's some feedback?
I think we're going to need, there's 20 people here tonight, plus whatever is in the room. That's less than a third of the club. And so I know I'm going to send a note out to my students who are not here tonight and nag them and also their parents. But it might be,
Good luck.
right. It might be worthwhile to schedule another couple of these and tell people, if you want to fly the airplane, you got to come to one.
Yeah, you're gonna have to know how to do it.
Right.
So, okay.
Rodney, what would happen if you go fly and this happens to me all the time? I land and my phone is dead. I don't have a smartphone on me. How do we have any kind of a solution for that, or?
Use the computer at KCAC.
You can log in on there and use that.
Yeah, you can use it on any web browser.
Or at
Okay.
Lee Summit.
Those are all true. Your phone will warn you when it's going dead, Tim. I think it has.
I'm on FaceTime.
Okay, also in most of our airplanes now, we have USB ports. People have left them plug-in USBs in there, and thank you very much. Most of our airplanes have at least 2 places to plug USB cords in. So Tim, when you fly, plug your phone in while you fly.
Got it.
But don't talk and fly.
But don't talk and fly.
Airplane mode, phone down. Okay, we'll wrap up. We will take any more questions. You guys email us if something comes up. We'll get some emails with more information out, and we'll work on getting some more live demo stuff scheduled. So thanks again, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good night.
Yeah. Shout out to Frank and Eric for helping a lot with this.
Thanks, everyone.
One more question.
Well, no, one more thing before we adjourn, and I apologize, I should have done this at the beginning. But we've got one new member and one prospective member, so I'll have them introduce themselves and talk a little bit about their flight experience.
Sure. Camera on me? All right, well, I'll just say my name is Pete Parbell. I'm coming up on just 20 years of flying now, about 600 hours, commercial instrument. active with Civil Air Patrol.
Nice.
I've been with one club before when I lived up in Minnesota. Absolutely enjoyed it. So I'm looking at sharing those same experiences with this club, getting to know everybody, doing some of those flyouts. I am pursuing a CFI this year, so I'll be looking to get some training done as well. And so yeah, that's where I'm at right now. Just an active flyer. I want to continue that.
Great.
All right.
Welcome
Perfect.
aboard.
Welcome.
Thank you.
My name's Dennis Truman. I have 0 flight hours logged. So I'm just starting out. I'm a mechanical engineer with an aerospace company. So I help design parts for planes, but I've never flown one. So I want to get some hands-on experience. And so I'm looking at joining your guys' group here soon. I'll be putting in an application. So, yay.
All right, perfect.
All right.
Well, any other business or any other questions?
Yeah, I got one. Tell Tim that I had some questions on the invoice that I just mailed him and I've resolved it, so never mind.
Okay, good.
Hey,